Welcome to the latest episode of Trojans Wired, the podcast, which is an in-house production of the website Trojans Wire. We are part of the College Wire Network. Matt Zemek with USC women's basketball analyst Cece Clay. She has a lot going on at her YouTube and her Substack, so she's definitely going to promote her latest offerings later in the show. But anyway, we're committed to continuing this podcast in and through the off season. And part of our spring and summer podcast series with Cece is following the WNBA and, of course, following USC Trojans in the WNBA. And we just had on Sunday morning the Washington Mystics and the Connecticut Sun. Kiki Iriafen on the Mystics, Rhea Marshall on the Sun. And the Mystics, they were down 18-4 early. Like, they got punched in the mouth right off the bat. This was Connecticut's first game of the season. The WNBA season, regular season, began Friday night. Mystics beat the Dream, but Connecticut was sitting back, able to watch some film, able to just rest up on Friday and Saturday, and the Sun were energized at the start. They got the jump on the Mystics, but Washington, look at this offense. Washington scored 90 or more points in each of its first two games. The Mystics rally. They score 30 in the fourth quarter to beat the Sun 90-85. Kiki Iriafen, 17 points. 14 rebounds. Hello, she looks the part as the number 4 pick in the WNBA draft. Rhea Marshall did not play, and Cece, we'll definitely dive into Kiki Iriafen's magnificent performance leading Washington to another win. But I got to start here. Rhea Marshall, she's an elite defender. Like, she knows what she's doing as a defender, and you don't have to bring her on the court for offense. You gave up 90 points to Washington. You gave up 30 in the fourth. How come Rhea Marshall is not getting any minutes in a season opener, Cece?
That's interesting to me. And I think that on the offensive side, they're trying to develop her, but you're absolutely right. As a defender and a rim protector, and especially since, she was playing against an old teammate named Kiki Iriafen, who she probably practiced or she practiced against every day, when they were on USC's team. So I would imagine that Rhea knows Kiki's game very, very well. So I think that I was hoping to see that, and I was hoping that the coaches would think, oh, you know what? Let's throw Rhea in there to see what she can do because Kiki's hurting us so much, and they played together. So Rhea knows her game. So I was hoping that that was going to happen, but I think that they're looking at Rhea as a developmental player. She needs not a lot of growth on the offensive side, I would imagine. So, you know, um, it is what it is. But I just thought that, somebody could get in that coach's ear and say, hey, let's throw Ray in on Kiki and see what happens.
And just the follow-up, Cece. We're not talking about playing Rhea Marshall 20 minutes. Like, give her like seven minutes just to kind of blunt Kiki Iriafen and prevent Washington from scoring all those points.
Especially when Kiki got her fifth foul, I would have threw Rhea in there. I just would have, you know what I mean? Because Rhea would have took it to her because she knows, Kiki, so I don't know. That was kind of mind-boggling to me, but it is what it is.
Cece, I think, if you were coach of the Connecticut Sun, like that's a nice little pay bump for you. I mean, you could do a really good job there. Just really startling malpractice in my mind from the Connecticut side. But now let's flip it over to Kiki. So again, 17 and 14. So like this wasn't just, making tons of shots and playing like a aesthetically dazzling game. No, this is blue collar Kiki. Getting it done, both ends of the court, putting in the work. Mystics have to be loving the two-way production that she is providing thus far.
And again, I have to say that in the first part of the game, she was kind of trying to filling out her way. When Shakira Austin got that tech on the bench and got thrown out of the game, it took Shakira Austin out of the game. So again, Kiki had to perform, and it's just something about when key players leave the game for whatever team Kiki's on. We saw it at Stanford, we saw it at SC, now we see it at Washington, where she just goes into another gear and her confidence just skyrockets. But I have to say, welcome to the WNBA, Kiki. I mean, she was 7 for 10, 3 for 4 on free throws, 14 rebounds, shooting 70% from the field. That's crazy to me. And her confidence, I mean, I can't, it seemed like she just got more confident as the game went on. There was a play towards the end of the game where she got the rebound and she went underneath Tina Charge and did a reverse around the basket and made that shot. I was just like, holy shit. You know what I mean? That was a side of Kiki that I never saw at SC. But speaking of which, look, thank you, coaches at USC. Thank you. Because whatever Kiki, and I'm going to keep talking about this, whatever Kiki was feeling uncomfortable about and having challenges, it is so helping her in the WNBA. You can see it. You can see everything that she was challenged with, everything that the coaches at SC challenged her with, and she herself had challenges with. Boy, she's in that W now, and she's reaping all the stuff that the coaches challenged her with.
And this brings up a really interesting point, Cece. We've talked in recent weeks on the show with the WNBA season, just getting going, that it can be really hard to go right from the NCAA tournament, Final Four. The WNBA draft is right after that, and then you go right into training camp. You basically have 5 weeks between the end of the women's college basketball season and the start of the WNBA regular season. Caitlin Clark struggled at the beginning of her rookie season because just that transition, it's such a narrow window. And then you have all this thrown on your plate. The point I'm about to make, Cece, is that, if you're a super duper star such as Caitlin Clark, and you're
Super
definitely the
duper.
best player in your sport, and then you have that transition to the pros, like one would expect you'd get knocked down a peg. But the point you alluded to, the fact that it was such a struggle for a lot of the season for Kiki, that might have like the inverse effect that going to the WNBA, rather than, oh, this is going to be tough, it's like, hey, I'm very cognizant of the lessons I learned and the growing pains that I had. I get to apply them right away. So in a weird paradoxical sense, that quick transition from the college season to the WNBA season, that actually might be helping Kiki, not hurting her.
Yeah, the way she was running the floor, just the way now I will say on defense, she still has to develop there, but kudos to her because she's 6'3" and she was guarding 6'5" Tina Thompson, who's been in the league for years. She was guarding a grown ass woman. You know what I mean? So, and she did really good for what she had to do. But, I also want to mention, not to get off of Kiki, but I also want to mention Sonia Citron, who came out of Notre Dame. I mean, between Kiki and Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's Sonia Citron, those two, Sonia, she's just so fluid with her game. Like it comes with ease to her. And I remember when Notre Dame played SC, and I wasn't like paying that much attention. And I wish I would have paid attention now because her transition from Notre Dame to the pros is pretty smooth as well. I mean, she's a pro, and watching those two play together along with Brittany Sykes. I mean, Brittany Sykes for Washington is probably one of the most underrated guards in the W. And I've always liked Brittany Sykes, and I always talk about her game because she's just one of those guards that she just does everything. So between Brittany, and she's a great leader. So between Brittany Sykes, Kiki, and Sonia Citron, I mean, they made it happen in that fourth quarter, and it was really really fun to watch. And one other guard, they have a little guard that helped out as well. I forget what her name is. Dang it, hold on, let me check because
I
it
just want
was
I just want you to
Melbourne.
check. Go
Melbourne,
ahead.
Melbourne. She came in and was very effective in the pace of play for them in the fourth quarter. So very
Yeah,
happy.
so Citron, Kiki, Sykes, like they were doing the predominant amount of the scoring for Washington in that fourth quarter. And I did go through the play-by-play log. Kiki and Citron, the two of them, they combined for 13 points in the final 6 and a half minutes. So not just getting points, but crunch time points,
Yeah.
meaningful baskets. And Citron scored 15 or more in each of her first two games. Yeah, like she looks really comfortable in a WNBA setting. So, and for the reminder here, is Citron was taken at number three, Kiki at number
Yep.
four. So they're both
Yeah.
performing up to their reputations as top five picks. But like the rookie growing pains, like we haven't seen them yet. Like not a lot of pain. It's a lot of joy out there on the court for Washington. I guess the follow up here with the Mystics, since that's really what we're talking about right now, is Atlanta Dream are in a transition year. They're kind of we don't know what they are or how good they're going to be. Connecticut's probably in for a long season. It's probably going to be a very difficult season for Connecticut after losing all five starters in the off season. These are not top tier WNBA teams. How do we recalibrate expectations for the Mystics based on these two games, or should it still be kind of wait and see? Because when you go up against the Liberty and the Lynx and the Fever, it's not going to be as easy for Washington. What do you say about the Mystics so thus far?
Yeah, I listened to the post game interview with Brittany Sykes, and the one thing that she said was these youngins, they got grit and they play with heart, and so you don't know what you don't know, right? I don't think there's any pressure on this team to go out and win a national championship for one. So I think they're just going out there and playing, and for them to come back the way they did against Connecticut, which I will say Connecticut, like you said, I think is going to be in for a difficult year. Um, but still, for them to show the grit that they did and come back and just want to win, a lot of people would have just copped out, but I mean, they got grit, and I think that starts with Brittany. I mean, yeah, Sykes. You know what I mean? Because she's such a good leader, and she just goes. Her motor is on full swing all the time. But she gave a lot of credit to her rookies. And the one thing she said was after the game, she went up to Sonia Citron, and Sonia Citron said, "I was just taking over what you were doing after you fouled out." And Brittany was like, "What rookie says something like that?" So she's like, they exude confidence, and so it's good when you have a belief. Your leader believes in you like that. It only helps you. So I don't know how Washington's going to do. I still don't think they're going to make the playoffs. They might, who knows? But it's going to be interesting because this team has a lot of heart, and they're missing, Aaliyah Edwards. So and Shakira, like I said, she got teed out of the game. So when those two come back and they're in full swing, it's going to be interesting to see how the rotations are. I think you're going to see Stephanie Dolson go to the bench, and you're going to see that rotation of Aaliyah Edwards, Shakira Austin, and Kiki Iriafen more.
Just one other note from the Mystics' 90-85 win over the Sun. Brittany Sykes, who we're both raving about, she scored 27 points. So it's not as though it's just providing steady veteran leadership in the backcourt. No, like she was leading by example, filling it up for the Mystics, and I think she was 8 of 13 from the field, so an efficient 27 points for Brittany
Yeah,
Sykes.
she was aided. Yeah, all their players were efficient. I mean, Kiki was 7 for 10. Sykes was 8 for 13. Citron was 5 for 10. Sug Sutton was 3 for 7. I mean, they shot 51% from the field. I mean, yeah, from the field, and they shot 33% from the three, which is, you need to be between 33 and 35% to be effective. So they were right there. So just a really good outing by them. I was really happy to see them win because they're just feisty. And Kiki, like I said, in that third and fourth quarter, especially when Shakira got teed out, she just took it to another level again. So I think if Washington has a player that they need that just fouls out or something, you're gonna see Kiki in beast mode.
It's what she does. As you said, when Cameron Brink got into foul trouble at Stanford, there was Kiki. When Juju gets hurt, there's Kiki. It's been a pattern, as you've accurately noted. All right, continuing on with our focus on the WNBA, because hey, you're here because you love women's basketball and you love CC Clay's women's basketball analysis. CC, we all know what the big story was, certainly from a media standpoint over the weekend. It was Angel Reese, it was Caitlin Clark. Take us through that play, what you saw, what you perceived, and what you think is relevant in terms of mentioning about that play.
First of all, if Indiana had been playing better defense, that would have never happened. Caitlin would have never had to do that, and we wouldn't be where we are right now. So Indiana needs to play a little better defense under the basket. That's what I will say about that. But I saw the post game press conferences on both sides, and Caitlin said it was a take foul, and Angel Reese said, the ref got it right. And I'm gonna agree with Angel because if people watch the replay, it wasn't just Caitlin Clark coming down hard on her arm, on her shooting arms. After she did that, she pushed her. She pushed her down. Now, maybe you could barely see it, or maybe you don't want to see that for the people who are saying that, that was a bad call. But Caitlin did push her unnecessarily. She could have just hit her arm and left it go, but she just pushed her. And so it was a flagrant foul. That the sad part of this it was between Caitlin and Angel. So the story is going to be much bigger than what it should be. And that's the sad part of this whole thing is that it shouldn't be that way. It was just a flagrant foul. It was a bad play by Caitlin and you know, Tech called and that should be it. Game goes on.
Yeah, I mean, for younger basketball fans, in the 1980s, things much more violent than that foul happened all the time. And the prevailing culture in the NBA then was, okay, shoot your two free throws. Like, 45 years ago, really, really, really hard fouls, things that we would regard as truly dangerous plays was just beep, tweet, go to the line, two free throws. So, it's interesting that, a play like that, yeah, we should just move on, hard foul, flagrant, and just turn the page. But instead, the reactions became a part of the story. So, CC, we're going to keep this in the frame of talking ball, not the soap opera. How consistently, in your estimation, is that kind of foul called as a flagrant? And do you think there's anything in terms of basketball, and this doesn't just apply to the WNBA, it can be college, and it can also be the NBA itself. Should there be any different new ways in which we regulate this kind of thing so that we get not only the consistency, but also the appropriate level of punishment just for committing fouls that are overly and unnecessarily hard.
No, I don't think, I just think it's part of the game. To be honest, I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, I see something wrong with the push, but to the take foul was fine, but the push was unnecessary. I don't think it happens that often. I think frustration comes into play, and people and players don't want to admit that. Players don't want to admit they blew it, and so they just took it out on the player that they fouled. Players will never admit that. But I think for basketball, I think it's better to have the hard. I mean, I like when they get feisty. You know what I mean? Because they're really playing. Let them play. Like if they're, you got to have some type of management, but let them play ball because otherwise you're gonna get too many calls that are ticky tack that should have never been called. Just let them play. And who cares about the feistiness? Girls are feisty, but I'll tell you what, it happens more in the NBA than it does in the W. I mean, to me, the men, I won't say what I want to say, but men are they do some crazy stuff that gets unseen all the time. You know what I mean? They push, they shove, they pull on each other's shorts, they hold, they do unnecessary stuff and they cry about it and whine about it when fouls get called on them. So the men's game is a lot worse when it comes to things like that than the women's game. But I just love it because it just shows to me that women are feisty. They they can take care of their own, and they're like, bring it. They trash just like the whole trash talking thing came up. Where refs want to, limit the trash talking of women basketball players, but men trash talk all the time. So you can't have it both ways. If you're going to allow men to trash talk, then you got to allow women to trash talk. And what's wrong with it? People aren't used to that. So it's like, oh my God, what did she say? What did she do? You know what I mean? And you can't let them play. It's a part of the game. Trash talk. Get out of my face or come
It
get
is.
it. Trash talk.
Sports, I say this all the time because it's true. Sports are emotional. Sports are played by real flesh and blood human beings. Don't try and put these human beings in a box. And it also influences like voting for the Hall of Fame or voting for awards. You're not voting for the most moral, or virtuous person. You're voting for the best player. Like, hey, I'm all for morality and ethics and character. Like, that matters more than sports does by a long shot. But if you're just, trying to assess basketball merits, sports awards, it's not about who's the choir boy. It's who is the best player. All right. And I just think we should keep those silos, those categories very clear. And I think often it's all about voting for who we like the best as a person. It's not what it's about. It's for who's the best baller, who's the champion, who's number one. So that's part of the discourse. And so we're not going to go down that Angel versus Caitlin rabbit hole. We kept it about what's a foul, what's a legitimate basketball play, and hey, like you get beaten on a drive, you commit a foul. All right, two free throws, but side out. Let's move on to the next possession. But of course, the media is going to focus on the soap opera, but not Matt and Cece. We keep it about the ball.
Well, there was another one today in in today's game in the Washington Connecticut game. Um, Marina Mabry. I mean, it was a one-on-one against the big for yeah, I was gonna say UConn for Connecticut and the big for Washington, and it was Shakira Austin, and she didn't like the way Washington's player or Connecticut's player bumped into her or whatever. She was posting up, and then the Washington player got kind of upset and turned around, and then Marina Mabry came in and was just trying to tell Shakira, "Hey, chill out." You know what I mean? But it's just a game. You know what I mean? It's just that's just tempered, like you said, it's emotional, and I love it. I mean, I love it. Let them do what they're gonna do. Look, what happens in hockey? In hockey, I'm not saying that I want the girls to fight because we don't want that, but I'm
Yeah,
just saying
yeah,
they allow hockey
yes,
players to fight.
yes,
I mean, and so that's why, and that's why a lot of people go watch hockey because they want to see the fights. And to me, it's like, that's crazy to me. You know what I mean? That they would want to
yeah.
go to a hockey match because they want to see the fights. So why do they allow that in hockey? But in NBA basketball and in women's basketball, oh, it's a big no-no. We're gonna tee you up if you call somebody a dummy. We're gonna tee you up. If you throw the ball hard, we're gonna tee you up. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just unnecessary.
Yeah, and like thank you as always for providing good perspective because we can get into curse words and trash talk and policing that and kind of being a nanny state from an officiating vantage point. What's a real concern? Ron Artest, right? Malice at the Palace, brawls going into the stands. That's a problem. That's an overreaction. That's severe. Trash talk, like it's just people having fun and loving to compete and having refed basketball, CC. Now, I didn't ref at the college or pro level, but I refed high school ball. And like, this is part of the deal. You're going to get cursed.
Yeah,
People are going to say mean things about you. The job of a referee is to take that. Now, obviously,
yeah,
you can warn people, all right? You say, all right, you said your piece, as a ref, like you can put down a marker, but in general, taking the chattering from players and coaches, that is part of the deal. It's not a thing where, oh, you're not allowed to criticize the ref, especially when the ref blows a call. Yeah, you gotta let these athletes vent. I mean, if they're getting paid all this money, they're getting paid to perform as entertainment and to express themselves as entertainers, as workers. So like that, it's part of like a workplace condition issue,
yeah.
really, that you have to, in a high stress, high pressure job, like who cares if you're wearing a suit and tie on the stock exchange or whether you're wearing a basketball uniform on the court? High stress job, you have to allow employees in a high stress profession to be able to vent. Otherwise, you're putting people in a straitjacket, and that's not healthy for anybody.
Yeah, I just want to say too, I think it's more than venting. I think it's just become part of the game to get into the person that you're playing, to get into their head. For a big example is I can go back to the UCLA versus USC game when Kennedy Smith clapped in Kiki's face when Kiki was bringing the ball down the court
Kiki
and
Rice.
yeah, Kiki Rice was bringing the ball down the court, and Kennedy Smith was like, defending her and clapping in her face, like, "Come on, bring it, bring it." You know what I mean? Now that's competition. That's trying to get in Kiki's head. We gotta allow that stuff, man. We gotta allow that stuff. You know, so it's part of the game and it's fun. Let
Part of
them
the
get
game.
feisty. Let them get feisty. The teammates will come in before anybody else. You know what I mean? And sometimes punches are thrown. We've seen Brittany Griner throw punches and whatever. It's broken up. They get suspended. The game goes on. Whatever.
Yeah. You miss one game, life goes on. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right. So we talked about, hard fouls and all that. Let's continue with our focus on the WNBA. And so, okay, we talked about that foul by Caitlin Clark. Let's talk about the Sky and the Fever and what you saw in that game. To me, CC, the Fever looked like pretty solidly a top four team in the W. I'm not ready to say WNBA finalist because the Lynx and Liberty, last year's finalists, they're good, they're veteran, they know exactly what they're doing. There might be a little bit of an adjustment for Indiana with the new pieces on the roster, but I do think, especially with Connecticut definitely falling out of the top four, I my initial impression is that Indiana is a semifinalist in the W. What would you say about the Fever at this early point in the
Yeah.
campaign?
I'm gonna say it like this. I think they have a good squad. They have a good squad. I mean, they got some ballers on their team. They got Dewana Bonner, although she's up in age. I think she wants to end on a good note, and bringing her in has been really good for them. But gosh, I mean, the chemistry now between Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark, you're gonna see that grow even more. And they look so good playing together yesterday when they played. I mean, Caitlin Clark got a triple double. You can't not say anything other than Caitlin Clark. She's a baller. She is such a baller, and they got some pieces around there, and they got Stephanie White, who's a good coach. So I would say top five, top five. It's going to be interesting when they play the Aces, and it's going to be interesting when they play New York because both of those teams have two totally different systems. And they both of them run the game through the post. So it's going to be pretty interesting. I can't wait to see those games. But yeah, Indiana, they got a good squad.
Next up on our WNBA first weekend review, Kelsey Plum, now with the Los Angeles Sparks. She was, starred with the Aces, but she drops 37 points in her regular season debut with the Sparks. They beat the Golden State Valkyries in Golden State's first game as a WNBA expansion franchise. What do you think about the Sparks and Kelsey Plum in a new environment? With a much less proven team. Like she goes from being part of a championship core under Becky Hammon in Vegas to LA in a very new situation. Any impressions about Kelsey Plum and the Sparks?
Yeah, that's interesting to me because I can't see Kelsey Plum playing 37, 38 minutes every game and doing what she's doing, what she did in the last game that she played. That's just not sustainable. So they're gonna have to figure it out quickly. I don't think I'm not for the last couple years, just me personally, I haven't been happy with the team dynamics. The players that they have. I just think that they need to build differently. Now, this is Lynn Roberts' first year, and I don't know what system she's trying to run because I haven't watched them enough. But I just think that they can't they can't build just around Kelsey Plum. They have to have some other. Dearica Hamby has to bring it. She has to be better. And I'm interested to see what's going to happen when Cameron comes back, if she comes back this season. And then Rakia's starting to shoot the ball more, but she's hurt. So it's going to be interesting to see. But again, they can't sustain what they're doing with Kelsey Plum playing 37, 38 minutes and her taking the bulk of the shots. It's just not going to work.
All right. Other notes from the WNBA first weekend: Paige Beckers makes her debut with the Dallas Wings, and Dallas played Minnesota. Very even for the first half, but after halftime, the veteran poise, quality, depth, defense of the Lynx took over. So it's the beginning of Paige Becker's WNBA professional education. That's an item for consideration, CC. And the other thing is, the Seattle Storm. The Phoenix
Yeah.
was the Phoenix Mercury were shorthanded. Copper is going to be out for several weeks. And they
Six
were
weeks.
missing a couple, 6, yeah, and they were
Yeah.
missing a couple other important pieces, and yet they drilled the Storm, and the Storm never really came together last season. So Paige Beckers in Dallas or the Storm still not finding harmony on the court. Those are a couple other interesting WNBA storylines from the first weekend.
Yeah, Seattle, out of all the teams, Seattle intrigues me because they have the talent. They should be a top four team easily, with Skylar and NECA, and they just have some good players. And Malunga only played in the first half, I think, in that game, and then she sat the rest of the game. So I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but they don't seem to have any team cohesion. And last year, it was Drew Lloyd that was the challenge, I guess, within their team cohesion. And now Drew Lloyd's not there. She's with the Aces, and they're still something's missing. I mean, they're defensively they don't play good. Offensively their sets are just discombobulated. They're not playing together. It's just intriguing to me. So, but what's interesting about that is, Skylar Diggins, she's a winner. She's competitive. So you don't want to get on Skylar Diggins' bad side, because she tends to have a temper and then she'll start taking it out on everybody, and holding everybody accountable, which is good in a way, but then, that team chemistry has got to stay intact. So they got to figure it out quickly because Seattle should be a top four team. Phoenix surprised me, and the other thing about Phoenix is they didn't give up either. They didn't give up. I didn't expect them to win that game. So I was especially, that's a whole new team, whole new system without Diana Taurasi, without Brittany Griner. It's just a whole new team. Kalia Copper didn't play. She was hurt and they still won. So that's interesting. And then the other one, like you said, Dallas. I think it's going to take them some time to figure out how to play with each other because you have a ball dominant player in Aguma. How do you pronounce the name? Agumawali or yeah,
Limbawali,
Agumawale,
yeah.
Agumawale, and then you have Paige Beckers, and so Agumawale, she's a ball dominant player. She's ball dominant. She likes the ball in her hands. She puts up a lot of shots, and Paige wants to be the distributor. But I think the same thing is going to happen where the coach is going to start asking her to, take some more shots on offense. So that dynamic is going to be pretty interesting too. And then it seemed like they already had an issue with their big girl. She didn't stay on the court. She immediately walked off the court when the game was over and didn't go into the team huddle and talk with the team. So already stuff is happening, but it's all good.
Instant challenges for Mr. Colcanis down there in Big D. So he is going to have his hands full. That's for sure. All right, so that's our WNBA survey. Moving along, other issues on the table, like in terms of this college basketball off season, in terms of how we evaluate teams, how we evaluate the quality of players coming in. Anything from Cece's notebook that you want to spotlight?
Yeah, so recently a story came out by the New York Times through The Athletic, and the writer of that story was Chantel Jennings, and she's a writer on The Athletic. And usually she puts out really good stuff, but she did her post-portal top 25. And I'm not going to go too much into it, but I didn't agree with it. And I did a podcast on it, a solo podcast, and that's airing tomorrow, where I not only talk about that in general, but I talk about how they're ranking the portal transfers, how they're ranking college teams, high school recruit rankings. So South Carolina, or who was the number one team, college team who got the number one or the number one recruiting class is what I'm trying to say. That system is is like a dinosaur system now, and why that's not working because anyways, I don't want to get into it because I'll go on a rant, but I
Yeah.
want you guys to really listen to my pod tomorrow because I bring in some key notes on high school team rankings and some portal rankings and why it's outdated and why it affects the preseason ranking and the after portal ranking, which was a total disaster in my opinion. And I will say this: you can't have four Big Ten teams in the top 16 post portal just because, and leave USC off of the top 25. You just can't.
So
It
that's a
makes no sense.
taste. That's a taste of what's coming on one of Cece's upcoming new podcasts at her YouTube channel. Cece, what else do you have going on at your YouTube and also at your Substack?
Yeah, so I'm still working on dream, my dream team for USC, and I have 15 with honorable mention of three. So I think I'm going to break that down into a series and go from 18 to one, breaking down five players on the YouTube channel every time I do that series. So look forward to that. And then Wednesday, we have associate head coach Beth Burns on the podcast. She joined me for a nice long conversation on defense. Probably one of the best podcasts you guys will hear because Coach Beth Burns is funny. You know what I mean? And so I
Yeah.
had a good time. I had a good time talking with Coach B. So you guys look to that on Wednesday. And then Friday, I have Alexis Lloyd who came on the pod. And Alexis Lloyd played during the Cooper years from 2013 to 2016. And she gave some great insight on mental health challenges and overcoming that. And she went from being a player to a coach now. She's now a college coach. So tune in to that podcast because she gave some very insightful truths. And was very happy to do that podcast with her. And on my Substack, I just released a Substack today on the reffing in the WNBA, and not how bad or good it is, but the diversity of the reffing, where you have mostly African American women in the W, and the refereeing as far as diversity doesn't equal to the output of black women in the W. So I did a Substack on that as well. Yeah.
So much good stuff from Cece Clay. And hey, Beth Burns giving basically a seminar on defense. Like,
Yeah.
like that, like that's a graduate school level podcast. So can't wait for your conversation with Beth Burns. It's going to be such an ultimate basketball education for me and for all the listeners to this podcast. Any final notes, final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, if you haven't checked out that Kelly Dormady pod, take a listen to it because she really broke down training in terms I've never heard before, and the importance of this and the importance of that, and how she feels about training, and gave some insight on her past. And Kelly Dormady used to be a bodybuilder. I never knew that. So, check out that podcast as well when you get a chance. And also, Matt and I, starting June 1st, will be doing the Big Ten. We'll be breaking down the Big Ten of where we see their rankings, and that we're going to do that in a series going from 18 to 1. So just a lot of stuff going on.
Yep. We do not sleep in May. Sorry, John Rothstein. We keep it rolling here on our off-season women's basketball podcast, giving you the look at Trojans in the WNBA. And yes, as Cece said, we're going to have our Big Ten off-season preview series coming up soon. So we're keeping the content flowing. And again, go over to Cece's YouTube channel. Let's talk USC women's basketball. Subscribe to the channel, like her videos, share them with friends, get the notification reminders for Cece's YouTube channel, and of course, subscribe as well to Cece's Substack, giving you the latest on USC women's basketball and more broadly, women's basketball in general. So we hope
Hey,
you're.
one more thing. One more thing. Hey, just to let you guys know, all my pods that I put on YouTube, including this one, are now streaming on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, any type of audio stream that you guys prefer. It's there. So when you're driving or when you're cleaning the house, turn on the pod.
Whenever you're doing your chores, listen to Cece. That's the bottom line. Okay.
Yeah, I have a nice soothing voice. So you guys go ahead and turn on that pod.
Well, you can listen to so many people in this world. Why not listen to someone who knows what she's talking about? Just make an informed choice. So, for CC Clay, this is Matt Zemek. Thanks for listening to the Trojans Wire podcast. We'll see you next time.
Fight on.